Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Thursday, February 26th, 2026. 2/26/2026. Oh, cool. I am your host, Joe Bakanovic. Real quick, just a little housekeeping. We've been noticing Charlie's camera seems to be having some issues. Got another one. I was going to try and get it to him today, but it'll probably be Shabbat, Sabbath, when we give it to him. So you won't notice anything until maybe Monday. And that's mostly on me, my fault. My back has been out most this week, and today is the first day where I can actually stand and do anything, and I got a lot of work I got to catch up on with my customers. So please forgive us. We're working on it. Y'all know that we're semi-professional around here, not real professionals. We're just semi-polished laymen trying to do the best we can with what we have. So anyhow, today we're back in the Bible Amongst the Myths. That's a book study we've been doing. We're focusing on this more for a philosophical focus rather than just a apologetic or, Bible study. This one's more about how the argument that the Bible is not myth and how Oswald differentiates that helps us to better understand the different general mindsets in our world. And today we're going to be continuing in chapter 3, which is about continuity, the continuous worldview. And today we start seeing this will be the point where we start seeing some real understanding in what he's been trying to show us. And we'll just do commentary as we go. Hopefully we can finish this chapter today, seeing how it goes. We might even be able to start on the next one. But we left off here. This is my Kindle page. I don't know what page number it is in the book, but on Kindle, it's page 54. It usually is fairly close with the book. The importance of nature symbolism. Now, remember, he's still defining mythology, but he's also talking about the continuous worldview. So picking up where we left off, he says the concept of continuity with its consequent reasoning from the given to the divine also means that myth always uses nature symbolism as the key expression of the divine. Now, remember what he had told us. His argument for mythology and everything is that mythology always has a continuous worldview. And the continuous worldview, if you'll remember, is that all things are one. The spirit realm, the physical realm, and man are all of the same substance, the same kind, there are no divider lines between us. So naturally, what you do is you take the given world that you can see, the physical world that you can see, and then you reason backwards that says, okay, well, the sun, the moon, and the stars reflect something about the gods because they're all made up of the same thing, so they're the same essence. So we covered that last week. Just a quick reminder. Now, Oswald says, G.S. Kirk is certainly right when he says that many of the explanations we give of the relations between nature and myths are both too easy and too hard. He means by this that the ways in which the myth makers felt the relationships were undoubtedly much more subliminal than we can conceive of. In other words, more mystical in the ancient times than we can think of today because of the way we were raised. He says, thus, our involved rational explanations of the ritual would be much too complicated for them. But at the same time, our explanations would miss the mysterious and numinous elements involved. So what he's trying to say is the way we think of myth today, we'd come up with all these fancy psychological explanations for why they believed in myth. And in the ancient times, they would say, well, that's way too complicated. It's real simple, guys. But then we would miss the nuance of the mysterious, mystical, magical elements of mythology because we don't think that way today, and they did. This is important, folks. As we get going in today's chapter, you're going to start seeing, hopefully, if this book is doing what I want it to do for you, and the way I'm explaining it, hopefully you're going to start seeing how what he's explaining here in this chapter is going to start reflecting in the world, especially with some of what we think of as the radical left's demonstrations in their well, what I would consider depravity and insanity. But you'll see what I'm saying. Why I've always told you, to the left, they're not insane within their worldview. They're not. They've just got a worldview that is contrary to objective reality. So in that sense, from our position, they are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, really. But from theirs, they're perfectly rational, and we're the ones that are trying to destroy their world, which explains the violent way in which they react. So let's continue with Oswald. He says, but granted the rightness of Kirk's observation, it's still correct to note that the gods were all personified forces, mostly natural ones, although a few were social forces. This is especially true of the great gods: heaven, earth, sun, moon, stars, rain, wind, fire, storm, vegetation, death, fertility, passion. All of these are represented at the top of any pantheon around the world. Why? Because these are the forces that need to be explained and ordered in life ordered if life in the here and now is to be maintained. In other words, we've got to explain these things and put them in an order and then control them. And since these forces are the keys to life in this realm, it is obvious that they must hold the similar place in the divine realm. That's that the divine is the same thing as the natural world. There's no veil or border between the two. That idea is going to start to have a lot more impact here momentarily. Significance of magic. Okay, pay attention to this section. This is much more important than a lot of us today realize, especially if we're of a biblical worldview. This is going to explain the rise of Wicca and neo-paganism, new paganism in our world today, especially in the Western world. He says, if we understand the human, the natural, and the divine worlds as all being part of one another, then magic, especially sympathetic or imitative magic, comes to have great significance. This is the Jedis use the magic of the Force. That's the type of thinking. You know, we're all one with the Force. So the Jedis learn to use this Force magic. That's the type of thing we're thinking here. Magic may be defined as, quote, the use of means such as charms or spells believed to have a supernatural power over natural forces, unquote. To accomplish something in the natural or divine realms is a matter of doing a similar thing in this human realm. Getting what you want is a matter of learning the right techniques. If you perform the technique in the right way, then the desired results must follow. Now, let's dump this down for a second and have a quick chat. You know how we've already talked about, to somebody who's following mythology, history doesn't mean that much to them. And we'll cover that in detail in future chapters of this book. But history is not a big deal for them. He just pointed out the use of magic in connection with mythology. You have to get things in the right order and do them the right way. And he's going to point out that you also have to make sure that everything you're using is, quote unquote, clean, free of evil spirits. How does that relate to our modern world? You notice how folks who pursue I'm going to say Babylonian ideal, one world government, one world order, socialism, however you want to call it. That's the Babylonian ideal, where everybody in the world is one, kumbaya. The people who pursue that ideal never learn from history that it doesn't work. Why? Well, because it's not that we say, well, the right person hasn't tried it. No, it's not that the right person hasn't tried it. It's like what Oswald just pointed out. You just didn't get the techniques right. You did your magic wrong. Something was wrong with your magic spell, your potion. Remember, these folks are trying to speak socialism into existence. Yes.
Yeah. So they didn't speak the spell properly. They didn't pronounce the words right, and they didn't do. Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's why they. Oh, yeah, my power.
And that's why they never give up on their way of doing things.
Yeah. Wow. I'll be back in a second.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to stop and make sure I pointed out to you what's going on here. All right. Oswald continues. However, the linkages between the realms, the arrows in the diagram above, if you'll remember the diagram, it just shows that the spirit world is interconnected both ways to the material, and both the material and the spirit is interconnected with man. The linkages between the realms are capable of being disturbed, and there are chaotic forces in the universe that would like to see just that happen. Now, if you have a continuous worldview, and I tell you that no, there's a transcendent creator, to the person with the continuous worldview, the pagan, the creator, the transcendent creator, in this case Yahweh, becomes the chaotic force of chaos, the evil. So this is a entirely photonegative. It's a flip of these two worldviews. If you have a transcendent worldview, there's need for only one creator. And this is a biblical worldview show, so that creator is Yahweh. Now, if you say he's the Muslim, no. Allah is actually continuous, pretending to be transcendent. We'll get into that at a later time. But there's only one. Man only knows of one transcendent creator. In all of human mythology, history, religion, whatever, it's only the Bible. And the Bible's not a myth for that reason. That's what Oswald's arguing. So that transcendent creator sees everybody who's following this continuous worldview as the rebellious, and they're going to cause chaos because as a result, they're not following the created order of creation, the way it's supposed to work, the way the transcendent creator said it's supposed to work. But to the pagan, it's the other way around. The transcendent creator put laws in the universe. Everything's supposed to continuously work according to those laws. That's chaos to my magic. So these two forces cannot coexist. They cannot, which should tell us a little something about our current state of mind and state of politics. If we continue to have a biblically based traditional Western worldview, you are not going to coexist with anything else left in the world. You can't. And that's going to get us into, and the forces of chaos in our perspective, the pagans, neo-paganism, new paganism, they're using our biblical tolerance against us so that they continue to infiltrate our worldview and tear down the structures that support and uphold it and continue it. And if Yahweh's people don't start to decide to hold the line, the forces of neo-paganism will eventually obliterate it. That's a spiritual battle that's going on between the transcendent and the continuous. And that's the battle, the spiritual versus the material is the way the Bible would write it, or the flesh, the spiritual versus the flesh. And that's what's going on. And Oswald's a believer. To what extent, I don't know. But the way he's describing this is perfect. Now, he doesn't see where I'm going with it. That's why I decided to do this book study. It was a brilliant springboard to keep going, because his focus is just to prove that the Bible is not myth. That's his purpose. which means he may see all of this. It's just not what he was focused on. So back to this. It says, and there are chaotic forces in the universe that would like to see just that happen. This is where the unclean and the demonic enter in. Now remember, unclean to a continuous worldview would be holy to a Bible view. And unclean to the Bible view would be holy to the continuous view. They're opposites of each other. So this is where the unclean and demonic enter in. Unless great care is taken to rid an area or a utensil or even a ritual of the unclean, the magic will not work. So to a neo-pagan, they have to remove all the conservatives out of government. You have to have a uniparty in order to get their idea of socialist utopia to work. And that's why they need the uniparty. They need total control in order to get their magic to work. Whereas a transcendent worldview understands that the Creator said, let the wheat and the tares grow side by side. Well, that doesn't mean you let the tares take over and choke out the wheat. It just means you don't uproot them. You can still confine them, put things around them so they can't grow and continue, whatever. But that's the point, though, is that the Bible worldview can allow the pagans to coexist and not eradicate them, but it's not, the other way around is not possible. The pagan must eradicate the transcendent worldview, which tends to be 10% of any given population, which tends to rhyme and echo with 1/10 part will be saved, which is what that's what the scripture also said the tithe to Yahweh is 1/10. So like I've said before, there's a very, very strong indication in the scriptures that only 1/10% of humanity is going to find the way. Okay. Any study of magic rites from any part of the world will show that simplistic, rational explanations cannot account for all that is done, nor can one-to-one equations be made between the behaviors and the results. Centuries of tradition lie behind each practice, superstitions. Furthermore, as we said just above, these rituals rest on connections that are more felt and intuited than they are reasoned. But be that as it may, magic is central to myth. And this is also why a leftist will oftentimes tell you, you don't get it, man. You can't understand it, man. You're just not with it, man. Because they're feeling it. This is their emotional rationale rather than their reasoned. This is why you can't reason with somebody who has a continuous worldview. Reason is a transcendent principle. It's not one of... The gods are not rational, therefore the material world they made is not rational. Man is not rational, therefore reason cannot be part of the cosmos. You got to feel it, and you got to use the magic to get these things done. So you've got to fight back the chaos. Hopefully you're starting to click with this. That explains what we're seeing in our world today, what we call the left. But quit thinking left. That's one of the things I want you to bring from this. Quit thinking left. Start thinking continuous worldview versus transcendent. Worldly versus spiritual. So what we're seeing is worldly people. And it doesn't matter what party you're in. You can be worldly. You can call yourself a Christian and still be worldly, of the world. That's continuous worldview thinking. It's pagan. You can call yourself Christian all you want. You're still following pagan thinking. If you're following pagan thinking, you're a pagan. Yahweh's words, not mine. Yahweh never said it. Oh, yeah, he did. He just didn't use those words. Anyhow, obsession with fertility and potency. Oh, boy, is this going to explain a lot. Finally, excuse me just a second here. I apologize for that, folks. Finally, myths, being the result of reasoning from the given to the divine, are obsessed with fertility and potency. This is hardly surprising when we consider the centrality of sexuality and sexual behavior to human life. Beyond that, sex is the one of all the physical desires that seem to be most related to the psyche and is thus more absorbing. It's easier to get people into it. It follows then that sex and sexuality, along with fertility and potency, should be integral to ultimate reality. It's like, tune in, tune out, get off, free love. And all. This is the hippie generation stuff. This perception expresses itself in a number of different ways. One of these is the prominence of the worship of the bull and other sexually potent animals, like rabbits. Another is the cult of the mother goddess, as represented by figurines and drawings, and the physical sexual features of the goddess are exaggerated, sometimes grossly. Ritual prostitution has already been mentioned. Perhaps the most widespread expression of this obsession with sexuality and fertility in the ancient Near East was the cult of the dying and rising god. This is why a lot of people think that there's nothing new in the death and resurrection of the Messiah, because that idea was in the mythical creation stories of the nations around Israel. But there are huge differences. In the Samaritan religion, as well as in those followed it, the Babylonian, the Egyptian, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Greek, and the Roman, one of the cycles of the myths tells how the vegetation or fertility god was killed by the god of death, with the corresponding death of all the plants and animal life. This is what's happening. The god of vegetation is killed every year by the god of death, so all the plants die. We call it fall. And then through continuing reading, through the ministrations of the dead god's consort, who is variously his mother, his wife, his sister, or his mistress, and sometimes all of the above, distinctions serve no purpose in the world of continuity. Remember this. The god is restored to life and nature is rejuvenated. So every year this battle continues. And you do certain rituals to help the consort bring the vegetation god back to life. So you're helping to bring him back to life and defeat the god of death. So you're partaking in this, which makes you pseudo, like a demigod. Scholars are divided over whether this myth was reenacted each fall, but the reference in Ezekiel to the temple woman weeping for Tammuz, the Babylonian vegetation god, suggests that in Jerusalem, at least, this was an annual event. This 40-day cycle weeping over Tammuz as Easter. And when you research this cycle that's mentioned in Ezekiel, the weeping over Tammuz and what they did, bright colors, usually especially tending toward yellow, green, and blue. The colors of Mardi Gras. Bright colors, partying, giving of gifts, sexual androgyny and licentiousness, and partying. It's Mardi Gras. Yes, sir.
Yep. And Lent. The 40 days of weeping for Tammuz. Which,
yes.
Yeah, it all fits right together. Yep.
So Christians, if you think there's nothing connected here, Mary becomes the mother goddess image in that celebration, who is the consort of Tammuz and brings him back to life. The practice of Easter is literally of Babylonian descent. It's got nothing to do with the Bible. Nothing. I was raised Catholic. I've always known that there was problems with Catholicism from the day I started old enough to understand what my catechism teachers were telling me. That's not going with what I'm reading in the Bible. And that was one of the biggest crimes in Catholicism. I'm not supposed to read the Bible. I'm supposed to go with what man teaches me. Just like the Pharisees wanted the believers to go with what the Pharisees said, not what Moses actually wrote. This is one of the reasons you want to keep people illiterate. So that's what's going on here, folks. We're watching, and that's why you've got people running around under a rainbow flag, wearing vagina outfits and waving phalluses at people, or stripping naked and screaming into that's all connected to this. They're trying to bring order back into their world, and they're trying to fight off the attempt at establishing what we would think of as law and order. This is a cosmic battle to them, whether they consciously are aware of it or not. This is the substance of the unseen realm. The pit has got to have been opened, and all of this unclean stuff has got to be back in the world, fooling the people again, fooling the Gentiles, fooling the nations. This is denials of boundaries. Clearly, if continuity is the correct explanation of reality, and if continuity is to function as we wish, then boundaries between the realms and even within them are not permissible. If there is any kind of boundary between humans and gods or between gods and nature, then the rituals will not work, and we humans are left with no way to affect our destinies. The denial of boundaries is especially seen in the sexual domain. The practice of ritual prostitution was far from the only expression of sexuality in connection with the cult. Incest, bestiality, homosexual prostitution were also practiced. Juvenal, the Roman writer, who was hardly a prude, refers to the temples as cesspools where every corruption was practiced. Why was this so? Was it an unfortunate aberration? Hardly. It is the theological statement. It is a theological statement. If continuity is to work, both as philosophical and practical principle, then there can be no boundaries anywhere in the cosmos, which means in order for the political left to get their way and get things to work, they have got to remove what they think of as the political right. Must be eliminated. In order for communism to work, you have got to get rid of that 10% of the population that actually understands capital T truth and bows to the transcendent objective reality rather than the one they're trying to speak into existence. And that's why they kill them. One cannot tolerate the other, whereas the other will tolerate it to its own demise. This continues. There can be no boundaries between parent and child, hence incest, or between adult and child, hence pedophilia. There can be no boundaries around marriage, hence prostitution. Or what you have now, free love with the hippies, or you have the swingers community, or all sorts of other things, or open marriages, which are a big deal in certain parts of our world. There can be no boundaries between members of the same sex, hence homosexual behavior. There can be no boundaries between humans and animals, hence bestiality. All these practices were told and acted out in the myths. They are not primitive behaviors, nor are they, as some maintain, the result of urban sophistication. In other words, and this is something I once believed, is that as you become more urban, piled up in the cities, this tends to become how you live, how you practice. And I thought this was connected to Rome. Now I understand that this, after reading this book a second time, seeing what I missed the first time around, this is the explanation for why these things happen. The more pagan you become, the more this practice will result. Notice what Oswald continues. He says, they are theological statements, necessary expressions of the worldview of which they are part. Once you allow boundaries anywhere in the cosmos, it becomes impossible for me to control things, to manipulate reality through the use of magic. It is as though a hydraulic system has shut off a valve between the master cylinder and the slave cylinder. Until that shut-off valve is taken out and there is a direct connection between the two cylinders again, the system will not work. Which also explains how peoples in different parts of the world who never had any interaction with each other will have very similar belief systems, very similar mythology, because it is a natural outflow, a natural function of their worldview. It is the inevitable result of continuous thinking. You're going to get ice cream out of it. Okay, you don't know what flavor, but you are going to get ice cream out of this way of thinking. And it cannot and will not tolerate transcendent thinking. So this idea that you control your own world, you control your universe and your reality, cannot and will not accept the claim that there is an objective reality independent and above and outside of our control. So that's what we've got going on here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this because, you talked earlier about, the one world government and everything because they're trying to eliminate all these borders and such. But as you do that and as these things mix together, you're actually creating chaos.
Yes.
So that's what really is behind all of this. In your attempt to gain control, you're actually creating more chaos.
Yes, and it creates a feedback loop because as the chaos is, now you need a bogeyman, somebody to blame for the chaos.
Right,
and then you have to double down and triple down. And this is why these people are in a cult. They cannot see their way out. So it's going to be the Jews, or it's going to be the the whites who have their white privilege and they don't, or it's going to be the rich. It's always going to be a bogey. Or if you're an animal farm, it's going to be the humans.
Oh, this
and
all goes
eventually,
back to Genesis. Adam, what did you do? That woman you gave me.
yes,
Eve, what did you do? That Nachash.
snake.
See, he tricked me.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't take personal responsibility. We always have to blame someone else for our own shortcomings, and therefore,
Well, that's
yes.
the next.
Yeah.
That's the next
Yeah.
chapter, and we're
Yeah,
going to
well,
start
that
the
is,
next chapter after the break.
But
You'll
yeah,
see it. He continues with this. Are you starting to see why I wanted to do the book study, though, Charlie?
oh well, yeah. This is.
I know you read it, but you weren't
Oh, yeah.
reading it with me side by side, seeing where
Right, yeah.
springboard
So I'm
with
picking
this.
up a few more little nuances as you're going over this too, that help reinforce some of the concepts. So yeah, this is. I hope everybody's getting this. And please, if you're confused at anything that we're covering here, pop some questions into the comments, or if you don't like doing that, send us emails. We want to make sure you're getting this stuff, because this is important stuff.
And real quick before the break, I know we're having technical issues, or at least it seems like it.
Yeah, Facebook is glitching on us. So
the better we're doing with our message, the more trouble we have, especially with Facebook and YouTube. We've noticed that we can throw the show in X and Twitch and Rumble will have no problem, but we end up with trouble on Facebook and YouTube. So that's because those are organizations with continuity thinkers. So,
right.
All right. 3-minute bottom of the hour break. We come back. We're going to start on the next chapter because we have time and we've made progress. So let's get on it. Get ready.
Let's roll.
Okay, welcome back. Now we've got this basic, you got a transcendent worldview. That's the Bible worldview. You got a continuous worldview. That's, the transcendent is the creator is outside of time and space. He's of something entirely different than creation. He's not matter. He's not energy. He's whatever. He's pure spirit. Whatever that is, it's not what he created. And then you got the continuous worldview where you have this eternally existing substance in the, and you're about to find out more about that. And it's vaguely female, and there's many gods. They all are created out of chaos and struggle and et cetera, and everything's connected, and you can control them and they can control you, and magic works and whatever. So those are the two worldviews. Now let's look at some of the ramifications. So throw that up there. This is the next chapter. Common features of myth. All myths. Polytheism. With these general characteristics of the worldview of myth in mind, everything we've done so far in this series, we can understand more easily why certain specific features characterize myths. Okay. First, myth is invariably polytheistic. Now you say, well, I'm an atheist. You still have a lot of gods. You're going to have science as a god, mathematics as a god. You're going to call the laws of physics gods, and you're going to treat them that way. But you're going to treat them as lesser gods that you think you can control and manipulate. It all goes back to how you define God. Okay. And we could do a book on that too, kind of like Bible Amongst the Myths. But a god is that upon which you rely and depend upon for your existence and your substance and whatever else. That's worship. When you rely on it, you're worshiping it. We've done this before in the past. So no matter what you want to do here, if you've got a continuous worldview, you're going to end up being polytheistic. It's all going to depend on how you're looking at it. But from the objective perspective, you're polytheist. It says, of course, there are many gods if we are explaining the divine in terms of this world. There are many different forces in this world, and there must be a god for each one. This is not an accidental characteristic, but an essential one. In other words, it's necessary that the continuous worldview be polytheistic. You cannot separate the two. The world is an emanation of the divine, and the world is multiplex. Therefore, there must be many gods. This is very Gnostic thinking here, folks. This is where Gnosticism comes from. Gnosticism is an attempt to explain continuous worldview thinking using transcendent terms, concepts, and language. It doesn't work. It won't work. It doesn't make you transcendent, but you're mimicking transcendent thinking while still holding to the continuous worldview. Images. Second, the gods are always represented by images in the shapes of this world. The ideal is an ideal representative of continuity. First of all, it is a part of nature, whether made of wood or stone or some other natural material. Second, it is commonly in the form of a human, not always. And third, it is ritually invested with the names and trappings of a particular god. Thus, the typical idol is at the same time divine, human, and nature or natural. Furthermore, by doing things to the idol, one is simultaneously doing things to the god or goddess and to the natural forces he or she inhabits. You know of one of these idols. We have it in this country. It's on Wall Street. That big bull. What's that bull got to do with anything, Joe? That's the symbol of Baal. Baal is, amongst other things, the god of material gain. And that bull is on Wall Street, where we have material gain, magic gain. Wall Street is no longer connected to the idea of real stockholders. It's fiat stock now. It's no more real than our money. Okay, so what you have is magical gain. So Wall Street is literally Baal worship, literally, from the biblical perspective, which makes it pagan. It is from a continuous worldview. And we have the religious symbology right there on Wall Street in the form of the bull. Eternity of chaotic matter. Now, this is one of the things the Bible must reject. This is part and parcel to the continuous worldview, whereas the Bible must be ex nihilo. It says, third, myths assume that matter is the fundamental element that has always existed. the essential continuant of the universe. Thus, in every mythical account of beings in the ancient Near East, the first thing, the thing that has always been, is chaotic matter. Out of this matter comes the first gods, who in turn form the chaos into present order. Often this chaotic matter is vaguely female, but it is never personal, even to the degree that the gods are. All of this is fully understandable if we recognize that the myths are the result of reasoning from the present cosmos to the ultimate reality. If our human experience is the given, then it is plain that all pervasive elements in the experience is matter. Thus, matter has always existed and always will. To be sure, spirit animates the matter, but matter is the base. Okay, we're going to stop here for a minute. Two things. First, if you're an atheist and it's just science and that's all there is in the natural world, you are, by definition, continuous worldview, which is, by the definition that Oswald's working out, a pagan. And if you're a pagan, you're a polytheist. Well, I'm an atheist, Joe. I don't believe in any creator. Doesn't mean you don't believe in gods. No, that's what I meant, Joe. I don't believe in any gods. Yes, you do. You're just defining God in a way that exempts you from believing in gods. And that's affirming the precedent. That's a fallacy. You can't do that. You have to go with the definition of the concept as it's defined outside of you. And since you're in a continuous worldview, you cannot tolerate any type of authority over yourself, which is why progressives play with language, because it's an outside authority. It is a veil or a border between them and what they desire, between their world, between their ability to manipulate things. And this is why they think they can change things simply by changing the language, because there are no veils. So by changing the word, they've changed its reality in the existential or spiritual realm of creation. This is also what happened to the Greeks, the Greek philosophers, as they came to the conclusion that you cannot have an eternal chaotic matter. Eternity is not logically possible, and it isn't. They realized that the universe had to have a beginning, and it had to come from an unmoved mover, somebody who is not subject, or something that is not subject to the laws of this material world. So in other words, no equal and opposite reaction. They call it the unmoved mover. And that is why the world around them forced Socrates to drink hemlock, because he was starting to stumble upon a transcendent creator. If he seeks the creator, he will find him to the best of his ability. And he was doing this through observation and reason. And he was starting to come up with the realization that his pagan gods was not how the world actually worked. That was not permissible in that pagan world of Rome. And therefore he had to die. This is one of the biggest reasons they have to kill off the Messiah. You cannot have that transcendent thinking in a world controlled by continuous worldview, which means that the legalistic rabbis who were controlling the spiritual results through their physical rituals, legalism, that's what legalism is, they were of a continuous worldview. Although they pretended to be spiritual, they weren't. Which is going to explain when Nehemiah, or is it, no, not Nehemiah.
Nicodemus.
Nicodemus, you knew exactly where I was going with this. This is going to explain when Nicodemus comes to the Messiah, and the Messiah says, "You, a teacher of Israel, you don't understand these things." The Messiah is telling him, "Hey, you're not as spiritually and transcendent. You're not a Hebrew like you think you are." So Nicodemus had to he had to humble himself and realize, oh, criminy crap, I belong to the world, and the king of this world is the devil. I don't belong to the spiritual realm with the Father. So that was probably a really nasty revelation for Nicodemus. This, Charlie, is this all? Am I making sense with all of this?
Yeah. I mean, this is the way it plays out, and yeah.
This is also
this has helped me so much to see what's going on and how
this affirms the Bible, folks.
Interact with this, I guess. Yeah,
but this affirms the Bible, and does.
Oh yeah.
Is this not explaining the differences in what we see in the world?
Yeah. Well, Beautifully, beautifully.
Now, here's the part that breaks my heart. This also explains why the people who actually seem to really see and understand capital T truth, transcendent truth, they're very small. That number is very small.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as big as we like to think it is. Most of the people that
No,
we
it's
think
not.
are believers and everything else, they're pretenders. And they may not even realize they're pretending.
Right. They likely don't.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to continue us with back to the whoops. Too many people hitting buttons at one time. This is another important part of results of continuous worldview thinking and mythology. Personality is not essential to reality. What? Pay attention to this part, please. But fourth, although matter is always animate, it is not necessarily personal. Again, the reasons are clear. While spirit may be assumed forth by nature and humanity, personality is found only in humanity. That being so, it is unreasonable to expect that the divine realm should be distinctively personal. So gravity isn't personal. The laws of math are not personal. So you don't think of them as gods. But to a continuous worldview, they don't have to be personal. It says personality also presents a problem for continuity. Personalities tend to distinguish persons from one another rather than unite them. That puts a veil between us. That sets us as unique and distinct. We're not a whole. We're not one. Thus, it is not surprising to discover that the deities in the mythical pantheons are not fully personal, but represent personalized forces. By that, I mean we do not find full-orbed persons in the gods or goddesses acting and reacting on a multidimensional level. Rather, the characters and their responses tend to be flat and stereotyped, like the characters in a Greek drama. One senses that the human personas of the gods are only masks worn to make the forces that they represent more intelligible. Okay, so the force of life, the sun god, he's not really a person. He's just presented. He's personified as a person, even though he's a god, in the pagan worldview. So if you're going to personify Mother Nature, there you go. That's the different nature goddesses. That's the idea. Well, that is not a biblical idea. That is a pagan idea. And you will see the effects of this throughout everything. On the left, this is why the person doesn't matter. Only the group. Only the group matters. Because the group is one. And yet they struggle to be the one in control of the group, which is an unconscious admission that they're wrong and they're living a lie. This is low view of the gods. Fifth, the myths take a uniformly low view of the gods. The gods are untrustworthy, seeking their own ends rather than caring for their worshippers' ends. They are constantly fighting amongst each other, often over the most petty matters. They are fearful, especially of death. How can a god die? But they can do nothing lasting about their fears, for each of them, like the stars in their orbits, are fixed to a certain fate. They are limited, both in knowledge and in power. They are subject to magic, both that of the worshippers and that which they may apply to each other. All of this may be summed up by saying that the gods are not absolute. If there is an absolute in the myths, and one is always dimly sensed, then it is that raw impersonal power, Kaufman's meta-divine, that is behind everything. That's the force in Star Wars. That which magic seeks to tap into and utilize, that to which the gods themselves are subject and which they seek to use against each other. So that's the force, is the absolute. So what you're going to have here is that in the pagan world, the gods are real, but they're not all powerful. They're not all knowing. They can die, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the Elohim of the Bible. That's not Yahweh. He continues, conflict is the source of life. In the myths, conflict is the source of life. There is never-ending conflict between the forces of construction and forces of chaos. That is not what the Bible teaches. It teaches that the source of life is Yahweh. The cosmos itself is the result of such a primal conflict between chaotic matter and the gods whom she has spawned. In the Mesopotamian version of the story, Chaos recognizes that the rapid reproducing gods are not going to leave her alone, and so she sets out to kill them. In self-defense, they destroy her and use her body as raw material to make present cosmos. The names and details change, but the same ideas reoccur in myth after myth around the world. In the ancient Near East, up to and including Rome, the theme may have been borrowed from culture to culture, going back to the earliest we know, the Sumerians. But what of other parts of the world, where no such borrowing is possible? Here, the only way to account for the similarities is to recognize that if one starts with this cosmos and reasons from it to the ultimate realities, then one will basically come up with the same result, whether the reasoner is an Australian Aborigine or a Hindu Brahmin. All right. Here's another thing that we're going to have to understand out of this. The conflict of life. You see that yourself in your daily. I've got to struggle to live. I've got to fight to live. I got to fight to make my... That's conflict. That is not a biblical principle. The biblical principle is Yahweh's will. I need to learn to live within Yahweh's will, the Creator's will, because his will is going to be done one way, shape, form, or another. There are forces trying to get in the way of his plans, but that's part of the thing that the Bible teaches us. His will conquer these forces. He will have his will. That's why the Bible tells us, have no fear, trust. Don't worry about the one who can destroy your life. Worry about the one who can destroy your spirit, your ruach. That's the one you have to worry about. That's only the Creator. Nobody else can destroy your ruach, and as long as your ruach is still intact, the Creator can resurrect you. It's not a problem. So the scriptures teach an entirely different worldview. It teaches dependence, trust, and faith on Yahweh, whereas the continuous worldview teaches ritual, magic, binding of the gods, making, teraphim, idols, so that you can control the gods. And then it also teaches that, you're kind of stuck. There's not a whole lot you can do about these things if it doesn't work. These are two entirely different ways of looking at things. This is why the person with the continuous worldview is always uncertain and fearful, scared. And this is why somebody with a true transcendent worldview, who knows that Yahweh is the one true Creator, shouldn't be scared. Yes, you're going to have a fleshly fear, but you should have the ability to rise above that fear because you have trust in the transcendent Creator, like he's asked you to have, like he's commanded you to have if you belong to him. Whoops, keep popping the wrong buttons. Let's continue. Low view of humanity. See if this doesn't explain the left a little bit. The list of commonalities goes on. There is a uniformly low view of humanity within myth. Humans were created to serve the gods, and to a significant degree, their creation was an afterthought. In the Babylonian creation myth, they are created to feed the gods after the gods had been fixed in the heavens and can no longer care for themselves. In one of the Egyptian versions, humans are merely the tears of a tomb that fell onto the dust during his struggle with chaos. It is not hard to understand where such an understanding comes from if we are reasoning from life as we see it. If humans seem insignificant when we look at the world of nature. Okay, so you're insignificant in the world of nature, you're going to be insignificant to the gods. Furthermore, humans have no real control over their destinies, or so it appears. Choice seems to be an illusion, given the fact that this visible realm is but a reflection of the real invisible realm. One must merely play the part that is given to a person with as much nobility as possible. Since there is no choice, of course, there is no responsibility. I want to stop right there for a moment. This is why, well, you're acting out your environment. This is your raising. You're not responsible. You're all just a product of the random chaotic chances that you have no free will. Folks, that's where the left is coming from. You might as well let this 55,000 time rapist and murderer free. He's not responsible for any of this. It's just a product of his happenstance. You can't, if you put him in jail, it's an injustice. From their perspective, whether they're consciously aware of it or not, from their spiritual perspective, they're acting out consistently with their worldview. And this is why you and I can't understand what the heck motivates them, because you
Yeah,
have a transcendent worldview.
you were just born that way. You can't change it. That's just the way you're made, and it's not your fault, and you can't do anything to change it. So just accept who you are, and be your authentic self.
And nobody else can say otherwise, because that's putting a veil
That's
between you and the reality that you're
right.
speaking
Yeah, that's
into
setting a
life.
boundary. Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to
Oh,
harshly
boy.
say I'm wrong, I got to get rid of you.
Yeah. This makes so much sense.
All right, we'll continue. I want to wrap this up before come to a stopping point before we end the show. It says your fate may be good or bad, but that has little to do with you. This is also why, well, the rich person didn't make himself rich. All the other people did that. Even in Hinduism, the hope of one day getting off the wheel of existence and being absorbed back into nothingness is a small hope. If you are a low caste person, there is no way you can better your lot in this life. You are locked in, doomed by something unknown and unremembered, and probably insignificant on anything but a magical level. It's also why you have an excuse not to even try. If humanity is insignificant, then individual humans are truly insignificant. In a worldview of continuity, individual elements only have significance to the degree that they reflect the norm. In other words, if you are outside of the group think, you're in a problem. You've got to be gotten rid of. This explains groupthink, folks. But what makes us individual is precisely the degree which we vary from the norm. Thus, our individual characteristics, our unique personalities, are of no importance. The individual drop of water is nothing. It is only the ocean that truly matters, the group. So it is that which we have in common with everyone else that is truly important. This, of course, accords with the law of continuity. We exist in that we reflect the ideal humanity. Our difference from what the ideal do not make us someone special. They make us nobody. Thus, the casual attitude toward the individual human being in much of the world is not the result of some calculated brutality. It is a result of the way of thinking about reality. So what they're telling us here is, the left isn't necessarily intentionally being ugly to you when you get outside of their groupthink. It's just that you're trying to destroy their worldview, which means you're against their gods, which means they've got to end you. They can't deal with you. They've got to get rid of you because you represent the unclean, the evil in the world. And yes, this is what I'm coming to understand. If a person holds a continuous worldview and you hold a transcendent worldview, they think you're evil. You're a fascist, a Nazi. So anybody who says law and order, as the law was written and intended to be enforced, not the way I want it to, not the living law. See, living law document, living constitution, that's a continuous worldview. But what we call original intent, that's a transcendent worldview, because that intent survives to this day throughout time. We can't have that. That's a barrier that gets in the way of what we want. We can't feels good do it when we have those barriers. That's not neo-pagan. That's biblical transcendent, and we can't have that. And this, to me, has started to explain so much, so very much in our world. And it has opened up some of the prophecies in the scriptures, end time prophecies that I never fully understood, but I'm seeing them now. Charlie, you got anything you want to add to this today?
Well, I was just thinking about this, is that this is one of the dangers of that continuous worldview. You think about the struggles that some of these individuals have within this, because you are really nothing in that worldview. And people, they have that innate understanding that they are something special, that, I think everyone's got that spark of Yahweh within them that lets you know that you do have some type of divine potential. And I think that's what, is driving a lot of this suicide rates, these mass murders, and things like that.
Down.
That
as
that
soon
these
as you
people
think
are,
you're nothing,
dealing with that kind of thing, and they think there's nothing. It doesn't matter if I go kill 100 people or whatever, because I'm nothing in this world and there's nothing after this world. And
Abortion means
what
nothing to
difference?
them.
Yeah. What difference does it make? I can't change anything in my worldview because, I'm insignificant and I have no way to, in that's the danger of this kind of thing.
This is also where we get universalistic thinking. This is where Mormonism
Yeah, oh,
gets the
yes.
idea that everybody's
Yeah.
going to go to heaven.
Yep.
Or that all gods are the one God, or all gods are the same and everybody gets saved. And that's where universalistic thinking comes from.
Yep.
So it's fraught with dangers, because I don't know where this comes from, Charlie, because it's very easy to prove that an objective reality exists. The very fact that we have gravity proves objective reality. Gravity doesn't care about us.
It doesn't.
It works according to the laws that were written over it, no matter what we do. So whether you feed the god of gravity or starve the god of gravity still does what the god of gravity does from a continuous worldview.
Right.
From a transcendent worldview, Yahweh spoke that piece of order into his creation. Gravity, this is what you're going to do. You will obey my commands. You will not deviate. That's actually in the scriptures. Not that way, but the concept is there. Creation obeys Yahweh.
Right.
That is actually proof that a transcendent world, an objective reality exists. That's proof.
But that's hard, Joe. Because if you accept the transcendent worldview, that means that you have a responsibility in this life. You have to actually act on that responsibility in life.
Oh, but it's worse than that, Jim.
There's consequences if you act incorrectly.
But it's worse than that, Jim. If you accept that, it means you're not God.
That's true too.
Told you it's worse than that, Jim.
Yeah, that's true too. You have to give up that idea that you are God or can become a God, Mormons. So, yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. This.
I don't know whether or not he's aware of this, but the way we're tackling his book is multifaceted understanding. We are doing apologetics, proving the Bible is not a myth. We're doing philosophy. We're defining what mythology is. You're also doing philosophy in the relation to human nature and worldview.
Yeah.
Which gets into the world of psychology and sociology.
Yep. And then logic comes into play. If you accept the transcendent worldview, then you have to apply logic to that to see how you appropriately respond to that transcendent worldview.
But if you're going to take the continuous worldview, logic means nothing. Now I need the magic. How's the potion
you need
work?
the magic. Yes, you need the magic. And that's, oh gosh. I mean, that's...
And the magic is the groupthink, the lockstep.
Yep. And that's
if the lockstep isn't working, you have to change the lockstep.
I'm looking back at my time in Mormonism and I see magic all through. Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, you got to have the magic underwear.
Yeah. Well, Joseph Smith was he was a sorcerer. It's plain and simple. That's how it all started out. It's amazing.
So, all right. That's where we're going to wrap for today. We appreciate y'all being with us here for this. I hope you're getting as much out of it as we are. Rereading it and asking Charlie for his feedback live on the air, that helps, because he got a lot of what I knew that he'd see out of it when he read the book for himself. But we sharpen each other, we bounce off of each other, and we grow the ideas and the understanding together. If there's anything that we're covering that you're confused with or you want to ask questions about, you feel free to email joe@theroadtoconcord.com. You're free to post questions live in the chat. You're free to call in if you'd like. It's all up to you. We're here to teach as best we can. We're trying to find our way in this world just like you are. We're just sharing it. We're doing it live. We're reasoning out and wrestling with Yahweh live on the air. Yes, I know the road says the road to Concord, but I've since understood when I originally titled it, it's like, oh, that's going to be natural law and natural rights and the founding fathers and all that. Well, guess what? That is natural law, natural rights, but it's also part of prophecy in the Bible over Ephraim. I understand it. I see it now. And that road to that was to show us that you get the nation where man rules himself by law and still can't do it. So we had a theocracy under Yahweh with Moses, and they wanted a human king. So a monarchy didn't work. And now we tried in this nation, we tried communism. Jamestown didn't work. Then we tried the rule of law. That hasn't worked. That's fallen apart. It's all meant to teach Yahweh's people, him and him alone. You have to trust him. You have to have a transcendent worldview where you trust your creator to take care of everything. And then you just do what he asks you to do. That's what it's all meant to teach us. And it's meant to teach the watchers as well. And that is the road to concord. The road to true liberty and true freedom should land you back to Yahweh, the transcendent creator of this universe. So the name works. Anyhow, we thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We hope we're enriching your world in some way, shape, or form. Tomorrow, next chapter in The Scepter and the Birthright by J.H. Allen. I'm looking forward to this as well. So until we see you again, y'all take care of yourselves. We love you. Stay safe. Bye-bye.